Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Austin, Texas, is senior writer Mike Craven. And Craven, we got a pretty light week this week in Texas college football. Last week was Judgment Week. This week is Sleep Week. 6 of the teams are off. So instead, we're going to do a mid-season what we got right and what we got wrong. Checking back in on some of our boldest predictions to see how we did. What do we want to start off with? What we got right or what we got wrong? I feel like everyone wants to hear what we got wrong. So that might be my pick, but what do you want to do?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go what we got wrong. We got 10 of the 13 teams have played 4 games, which is 33% of the regular season. So it feels like we've had enough data points to make some decisions on if we got it right, we got it wrong already.
Okay, let's get the skeletons out of the closet first. Do you want me to start or do you want to start?
I'll go with my first one. My first one is that Texas State was going 7-5 again.
I'll eat that one too. I was with you. Both had the under.
I think the logic was strong at the time. Program that had gone 7-5 and back-to-back seasons, lost their whole defensive line to the transfer portal, breaking in a redshirt freshman quarterback, some new starters along the offensive line, question marks at cornerback. What was the depth at wide receiver? So to imagine that hitting the ground running and having the best regular season so far of the Kenny era, considering you had a team that could beat Baylor in that first year, I just thought it would take some time. I thought they would lose the road game against UTSA. I thought the Sun Belt would look better. But combined with beating UTSA on the road and teams like Louisiana having some injury problems, just not looking like themselves, I think this Texas State team easily clears 7.5.
Now, counterpoint. This time last year, after they scoreboarded UTSA and barely lost to Arizona State, I would have said they're still a dark horse college football playoff team, and they ended up going 7-5.
That is true. I think the schedule was a little bit harder last year. It felt like the Sun Belt was deeper. I think this team's exciting and kind of built differently. I don't think that there's 4 more losses left on the schedule. Maybe they blow one like they did against Sam Houston last year. But the other losses were, Georgia State, Louisiana, who they always struggle with. I just think they're a better team than I thought they were going to. And you look at all the power metrics out there and the betting lines and the power rankings, they're projected to win 8 or 9 games now, to where, Vegas was with us going into the year where the under was juiced and 7-5 was kind of the predicted outcome.
So what has been the biggest surprise for you, do you think? Is it Bo Sparks having 370 yards and 5 touchdowns in 4 games at wide receiver? Is it how Kenny has reloaded the rest of the team despite losing all that star power? Why are they surpassing your expectations?
I think GJ Kinney is one of, if not the best, kind of G5 talent evaluator going right now. Like his ability to get into the portal, find players who fit that system and just reload. He did it the first year he came to Texas State. They turned over the entire roster and won 7 games right away, 8 games with the bowl. This year we talked about all the players he was going to have to replace at corner, on the defensive line, on the offensive line. It's just hit. And then you look at the quarterback position. Went to the portal to get some depth and bring in some guys to compete with Brad Jackson. But to find him at San Antonio Reagan when, a lot of other schools overlooked him, to kind of develop him and unleash him, and him already playing, this well. I just think the quarterback play, just the way that they're playing offense, like they're going to get to at least 8. I think they're going to play for the Sun Belt Championship. If I was redoing my predictions, I would say Texas State is playing for the Sun Belt Championship in a rematch against James Madison.
Yeah, so I'll share that one with you. I don't think my first pick you're going to share with me. I think I got my entire fantasy team wrong when we did our college football fantasy draft. I pulled up the screenshot today, and it was pretty brutal. As I left the fantasy draft, I kind of felt like I bombed the test a bit. Like you're just walking out of the classroom, and you're kind of checking with your friends on, the strategy on the questions. Like, hey, did you get Abraham Lincoln for question 8? No, you got not even a U.S. president. Okay, shoot. And I was really frazzled. Owen McCown was my quarterback. He's averaging 189 passing yards a game, which is 7th in the AAC. CJ Baxter's hurt again. Ryan Wingo had 3 catches on the season midway through the 3rd game of the year. Josh Cameron had 2 fumbles against ASU, and RJ Maryland has 76 receiving yards. So not great. I'm
probably winning that one.
Probably.
I think so. Some of those are, I think you had them right at the, like who could have predicted Owen McCown in the UTSA offensive passing game was going to look so bad. That's been one of the bigger kind of surprises early in the year. Thought the offense didn't know what to expect from the UTSA defense. Not surprised that they're 2-2, just surprised on how they've looked to get 2-2. RJ Maryland not quite back 100% from that injury, still working into the offense. So some of that I think is happenstance, not so much just a bad pick. But
I did pick the all injured team. Like RJ Maryland and CJ Baxter are constantly battling injuries.
That's true. So do we want to transition to one that we got right or just keep going with the wrongs?
Let's space out the wrongs. Let's go to a right now.
Okay. North Texas being in American Conference Championship contention. One of my 10 bold predictions was that UTSA or North Texas would play for the American Conference Championship. I feel pretty good about where North Texas is after 4 weeks of the football season. The offense, good as usual, even with Drew Mestamaker and a new quarterback in there. They've been able to run the ball. They found a true freshman running back to provide a little bit more depth there in the run game alongside McGill. As I mentioned, Mestamaker's been great, has a lot of wide receivers he can look after. And that defense, while it's not like top 10 or top 20 in scoring defense, they've created a decent amount of turnovers. They scored 21 points off turnovers against Army. And as we've said on this podcast for years, if North Texas could just get average on defense, that they'd be good. They're about average of scoring defense, and they're 4-0, maybe about to be 5-0 for the first time since 1977. So they don't play Memphis. They don't play Tulane. They've already won at Army, and they get Navy, South Florida, and UTSA at home. Like, it's set up perfectly for the Mean Green to sneak in to the American Conference Championship.
Yeah, as you know, our office is infested with North Texas grads, so they have been on top of the world. Talking about the season, they're like, we didn't know this is complimentary football. Like, we're not used to this. What like Talladega Nights? What do we do with our hands? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they used to know what to do with their hands, and that was cover their eyes when North Texas was playing defense. And so now they get to watch the full game, and hopefully they have a big crowd there at home against South Alabama. And if they win that football game, they get an idle week, and then they're at home Friday night against South Florida in what would be a college football playoff, like eliminator type football game. Like, think about that. Like, North Texas at home on a Friday night has a game with college football playoff implications. That's big time for a program that hasn't had a winning record in years.
Yeah, I'm going to get some North Texas fans mad at me when I say this, and rightfully so, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is not one of the what I got right things, but I do remember saying preseason that I think Eric Morris is the most likely head coach to not be at his program the next year, whether that is they fell short of expectation and it was year 3 and it's time to move on, or Skylar Cassidy's defense balls out and then he takes another OC job or a Power 4 coaching job. And I do feel pretty good about that oddly specific prediction.
Yeah, with Gundy's firing, that is now 3 head coaching openings already on the season. There was only 3 last year at the P4 level. So they've already matched the P4 jobs that are open. This is going to be a bloody coaching carousel. There's going to be a dozen P4 jobs or more open. That's going to trickle down to the G5 level. I'd imagine that there's, 24 coaching jobs open by the time this thing ends. A lot of movement, a lot of lists are going to be out there, and Eric Morris's name is going to be on almost every single one.
Yeah. Okay. For my first pick of what I got right, I feel good about Texas A&M going over 7.5 this year. I had their over. I know that this game against Auburn, we'll get to it, is a huge test, because if they don't beat Auburn, I now feel really shaky about them hitting their over, because if they lost to Auburn, that would tell me that this is still the same old Texas A&M type team, but I don't see them going 7-5 this year. I think it's 8-4 at worst.
Yeah, the schedule goes from looking pretty tough on paper with those road games to now that you've slayed one of the Dragons to open it up pretty good. If you can get past Auburn, as you mentioned, the next 3 games are Mississippi State at home, Florida at home, which may not have DJ Lagway, and then on the road at Arkansas, and maybe they don't even have a head coach by then.
Yeah.
And so obviously going to at LSU and at Texas is tough, but and at Missouri, I think has popped up as a potential really hard game. So still 3 legit road trips to worry about, plus South Carolina and Auburn at home. And so you could see 5 losses. It's the SEC. You never know. But I'm with you. I was on the opposite side. I had the under Texas A&M, and now I feel like they're for sure going over. If I was to place my bet again today, I would absolutely take the over.
And why did you have the under? Because that's kind of your second what you got wrong.
Yeah, what I got wrong was not believing in the Texas A&M passing offense. And again, kind of like the Texas State under 7.5, I feel pretty good about the logic. I mean, we saw him last year. You look at CFB stats of kind of the top passers from last year. He's like 98th in terms of yards per game. He's up to 13th this year. And some of that obviously is Marcel Reed, and he deserves a lot of credit. And a lot of that's Colin Klein, the offense coordinator, who is another name inside the state of Texas that's going to be on a lot of the lists for the job openings. But I think the biggest deal here is just what they added around Marcel Reed. It was an understanding of the type of quarterback you have and the type of wide receivers that would excel best with him. And they found 2 guys in Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion that are excellent after the catch. And that has been big for the A&M offense. Like Craver had over 130 yards after the catch alone against Notre Dame in that win. And so I said all offseason that your outlook for Texas A&M was absolutely connected to your perception of what Marcel Reed in the passing game was. Because mine was low, I went under. Now that we've seen what this passing game can look like and the talent that Reed has around him and the consistency he's built, I think this A&M team is more likely to win 10 games than to win 7 games.
I was on the over, but I did think that they were just going to run the ball 50 times per game.
Yeah, me too.
Right. I didn't think Marcel Reed was going to be the difference maker in carrying them to the over win total. But I also had no idea, like you mentioned, Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver were going to hit as big as they did. Also, weird thing about Mario Craver and then Bryce Pollock at Texas Tech, both guys who were awesome in Texas college football this year, both came from Mississippi State. It's like, how was Mississippi State not better last year? Probably because they had no line, but still weird.
Purdue was one of those teams too that like they were really bad, but in the transfer portal, you saw a lot of teams grabbing some Purdue players that they were excited about. So sometimes the parts are greater than the sum.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I am going to go with my second what I got wrong. I no longer think UTEP is a bowl team after they lost to Louisiana Monroe. That game was the big red flag for me where I'm starting to sell my stock for UTEP. Not necessarily for the Scotty Walden era, but I thought they could have been the surprise team in Texas this year. I don't know if I think that any longer because, like you mentioned in our recap pod, they didn't make enough changes to their physicality on their offensive and defensive lines as I thought they potentially would. They still look kind of small, like you mentioned.
They probably needed one of the Utah State or ULM games to get over 6. They still have Liberty at home, which is a tough one. Louisiana Tech's a 4.5-point favorite in El Paso going into this week. But then on the back end of the schedule, you thought that there was some wins to gobble up, that they could close with a really strong season. Delaware looks like a legit football team, already knocking off some established G5 teams along the way. Jackson State doesn't look like they took as huge of a step back. Kennesaw's been okay. And so while the Sam Houston game looks more winnable than ever, I don't know if the back end of the schedule is as easy. They've already lost 2 coin flip games at Utah State and now against ULM. And so, yeah, backs up against the wall. Probably more likely they end up under that number than above it. I'm with you on that one. I was also pretty high on UTEP going in. But as you mentioned, I don't think they have the body types yet to compete. My second one that I got right was Houston's fast start.
Mm-hmm.
I called a 6-1 start for the Cougar season. They are 4-0 right now, favored by 12.5 to become 5-0. 3-0 right now, favored by 12.5 to become 4-0 against Oregon State. And then they got a big one against Texas Tech. Like that one is the one that I thought that they were going to lose. But then after that, they go to Oklahoma State, which dead cat bounce will be against Baylor, if anything. So I think the Cowboys pretty dead to rights. That feels like a good road game there.
Wait, hold on 1 second. Oklahoma State beating Baylor the week after Gundy gets fired. That is so perfect for Baylor's season. I can already see it happening.
Well, the last time a really famous, long-tenured coach got fired and Gary Patterson at TCU, they played Baylor the next week, and Chandler Morris went off and won that football game. So it's happened before. But at Oklahoma State, feels like a winnable one for Houston. Then you're at home against Arizona, 6-1 right there in front of it for the Cougars.
Yeah, I've been so impressed with Willie Fritz in year 2 because I had questions on if his style of program building could work in the modern era of college football. And I think he's starting to answer those questions. Or is he answering those questions, Craven, or has the schedule just broke so easy for them?
I think the schedule is broken easy for him, but what I find most admirable about Fritz, and when I talk to people about like, what is Fritz's secret sauce? The thing that they always say is like, he adapts. He wasn't like he changed both coordinators, one by choice and one because of hired away. But just going into the portal and kind of retooling the whole roster, he didn't get stubborn with it. We just mentioned Mike Gundy. He's not one of those type of dinosaurs where he's like, well, back in my day at Blinn Junior College, we used to, like he sees what the sport is now. He's leaning in to NIL. He's leaning into rev share. He leaned into the transfer portal. He's recruiting Houston. It's a year before I thought it would hit. And some of that is the schedule. But they're playing really well. They're playing balanced football, complementary football, as we said, and Fritz's teams rarely beat themselves. And they're just aggressively competent. And that's what Houston is right now.
Okay, so my second, what I got right. This is not like an official victory lap here, but I picked Texas going under 9.5 wins, and I think they're closer to a 9-win team than they are to a national championship #1 overall team.
Yeah, and we can just combine that with my last, what I got wrong, because I had Texas winning the Natty. I thought that the defense was the best in the country, if not top 3 best in the country. I think I feel pretty good about that. I think the Texas defense is all it was advertised. Colin Simmons hasn't completely, been the game wrecker we thought yet, but that Texas defense is legit. That is a national championship winning defense. I didn't think the offense would look like this.
It's national championship defense with Frisco High School offense.
You're right. Yeah, Peach Bowl offense. Well, I guess the Peach Bowl is a good bowl these days. I shouldn't use the Peach Bowl. A Liberty Bowl offense, and a Rose Bowl defense for Texas. I just thought Arch Manning would be better. That could have been one that I just kind of combined that into the Texas thing. We had Arch Manning, first team quarterback in the state of Texas, and that's the one that looks the worst of all of them, probably.
Yeah, the Texas thing is tough because I was in Austin this past weekend with some old buddies who graduated from UT, and they've gone from preseason national championship to holy shit, we might go back to the Alamo Bowl this year. Remember that 3-year stretch where 4-year stretch where Texas went to the Alamo Bowl 3 out of the 4 years? Like it might be back to there this year, which is what no one saw coming.
And even if their 3 losses are good losses, like let's say it's at Ohio State, Oklahoma if mid-tier plays, and at Georgia. I just don't think 9-3 gets you into the college football playoff with that schedule because you don't have the wins to offset it. Your best win would be A&M at home. And so I do think Texas has to win one of those football games. And with that offense, I'm not sure how they score enough points to do it.
Well, my under 9.5 prediction is still kind of wrong because I said they were going to go 9-3 and make the college football playoff in the single most controversial decision of all time. Like they were going to get in over the ACC championship loser, but that also kind of depended on Arch Manning looking amazing and the supporting cast around him not being as good. I think I picked Texas under 9.5 because I saw they were missing so much of the offensive line. They had to replace all the wide receivers. And I thought that was what was going to hold them back. I didn't think Arch Manning was what was going to hold them back. When I look at Texas' team right now, I can't make a determination on how much of a step back they've taken on the offensive line and the wide receivers because the quarterback it can't throw 5-yard hitches just yet. And I know he looked great against Sam Houston. And again, I do not want to dog on Arch Manning because I legit feel for him. I think he's going through the mental yips. I've been there before in my JV baseball career. So from one, guy to another, I can feel that. I just didn't see Arch Manning looking like this when I made that prediction.
Yeah, didn't see him looking this bad. Didn't see the supporting cast around him struggling this much. I thought Texas would be able to run the ball pretty well behind that offensive line, and they've been okay. And some of that's injuries. They hadn't had Wisner. C.J. Baxter's been in and out, and so I'm not completely giving up on Texas. I think that they can go 10-2 and get to the college football playoff, and without a dominant team, who knows? As much as we are down on Texas, they had the ball with 2 minutes left at midfield to go tie the football game against Ohio State.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not an awful football team. They're just not going to win in a way that's exciting or fun or like what we thought it was going to look like. It's going to have to be 17-14, that kind of stuff. But yeah, just an interesting year.
And that is why I'm going to hang on to my Texas goes 9-3 and makes the national championship prediction, because the committee's going to go back to them against Ohio State, Arch Manning playing as poorly as he did in his first start, them having the ball with a drive and a chance to beat Ohio State, and then ACC right now this year, so down.
Yeah, it's the Big 12, and if the Big 10 has a fourth team, there's Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, maybe Indiana has kind of solidified itself back to there, but the thieves of the spots are going to be if like Miami and Florida State kind of roll in undefeated and they play against each other. Both of those teams would go. The Big 12 could be one of those. Like, let's say Texas Tech goes 11-1 or 12-0 and then loses in the Big 12 championship game. Like that's a way to take one of those spots. So, the college football playoff dominates conversations. I did my last one.
I got wrong.
Yeah, I did my last wrong with the Texas one.
I low-key thought Texas Tech was going to go 7-5 this year. Like, the longer we got into the offseason and everyone gassing up Texas Tech's roster overhaul, I started to see I just thought the trend was going too far in the direction of they're going to make it to the Big 12 championship game. They're the clear-cut best roster. And I started doubting if this year's portal crop as a whole was as good as it had been in years past. And maybe they just overpaid in a weaker transfer portal year, and they were going to have a few stumbling blocks out of the gate like they normally did before this year, and the transfer group would kind of fall apart a bit. And I think I'm going to have to take the L on this one because they played 3 teams that shouldn't have even been on the field with them, and I wasn't ready to fully admit my wrongdoing before the Utah game. The Utah game is what changed it all for me.
Yeah. I think the 7 teams with the top transfer portal classes are all undefeated.
Florida State ruined our brains, I think.
Yeah, that's probably true. Tech's been really good. That portal class seems to have hit, especially along the defensive line. Just that group up front, just really, really good. Skylar Gill-Howard probably didn't get enough press amongst that group, but he's been really good up front for Texas Tech, even with the backup quarterback. To go on the road and to get that win against Utah. And for the score, it was 13-10 in the fourth quarter. So it wasn't like it was a blowout all game. But I think that score will if Tech stubs its toe once or twice, like that's the type of score that can get you in to the playoff otherwise.
But if they had won 2010, I still would have been impressed too, I think.
Oh yeah, 100%. I just think it's a data point for later down the road where it'll look better on the scoreboard than maybe they didn't dominate them in the way that the score could do. I kind of am workshopping a take here, and tell me what you think about this. I think Joey McGuire may be the perfect coach for this type of roster. We thought, because I was with you, right? It's like the Florida State thing. What happens if you hit adversity? If early on in the year, if you had gone to Utah and the opposite happened here, Baron Morton gets injured and you're the one that loses. It's 13-10 in the fourth quarter, and then Utah scores 24 points in a row and beats you. Like, what happens then? And maybe we won't find out because Tech keeps winning. But Joey's not like X's and O's genius guy. I think he would admit that. Like he's never been an offense coordinator, a defensive coordinator at the college level. He is a CEO. He is like the chief vibes officer. Like that is what Joey does. Like that is what he's great at. That's his superpower. That's why people want to play for him. That's why people want to work for him. That's why a lot of the people in the media love Joey. Like he is magnetic and sticky in that way. And I wonder, with a mercenary roster, with a bunch of all-stars who have been put together, mixed in with guys like Jacob Rodriguez and Behren Morton that have been there for the long run, I wonder if a guy like McGuire is best suited for that.
I agree with you, and I know I'm going to repeat myself a bit from what we touched on in the recap pod, but when Joey McGuire first came in, was it 2021 or 2022 that he came in?
Well, his first season was 2022. He was hired at the end of the 2021 season.
So his whole ethos was going to be, I'm the Texas high school football coach. We're going to get the best recruits from Texas high school football and build our roster that way. And heading into year 4, we had kind of discussed, like, this is not what we thought the McGuire era was going to look like.
Right.
Being so portal heavy this deep into his tenure. And that gave me pause on the McGuire era as a whole. But now as we get deeper into the season, I'm more along the lines of what you're thinking is like, hey, maybe he still is the perfect coach for Texas Tech, just in the different way than we thought.
Yeah, it's a happy accident for the Red Raiders.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely agree with that take for sure. All right, what's your last you got right?
TCU smashes the over.
Mm-hmm.
They were 6.5 in the books. I was dry, Carter. I can't even tell you how much this drove me crazy. Like there are times as a gambler, as somebody who enjoys a good bet, there are times when you feel so right about something and so sure of something that it makes you nervous as hell. Because the sports books, the casinos in Vegas, they don't get smaller. They don't get worse. Like they keep building on. They're more and more expensive. Like Vegas is winning. The sports books typically win, even against smart gamblers. And you're sitting there looking at the TCU over going, man, TCU's winning at least 8. Like, how are they a game and a half off on this one? Glad I stuck to my guns there. Lucy looks like she'll be able to go to college. The Horned Frogs are 3-0. Big game Friday night against Arizona State that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But look like a really good football team. Josh Hoover's great. That defense has been opportunistic. I think the Frogs, you look at their schedule, I just don't think there's any way that they go 3-6 down the stretch.
Yeah, because of Vegas always winning and the Taj Mahals they have built out there as evidence of that, whenever I see a line like that makes no sense, I just bet with what I think isn't going to happen. Now, part of that's too because I'm an awful gambler, but like if I saw this TCU team total at over under 6.5, I would have smashed the under on it because I believe so strongly it was going over. And I'm like, surely they know something. Right. I don't.
Right. I laid awake at night. Like, am I dumb? Did I just throw away more money than I should have?
I've watched so much Josh Hoover, all 22 clips. Like, what are they not seeing that I'm seeing?
I think so. Gambling still is perception. A lot of gambling is, I think books have gotten smarter. They don't move so much on the public lines. I do think there's a misnomer out there that the goal is to even out the books. Like the books will get weighted on a side of a bet if against the public, if they feel strongly about their position, right? If like 80% of the public money is on TCU over, but the other 20% is the sharps that they really respect. They're going to keep that number there. Where if it was reversed, they would move that number up because they're going to lean towards the sharps. So like, it's not always like an even thing, but perception still matters. And I think this is just my opinion. I think the way that TCU lost that national championship game, and then the fact that they then lost to Deion Sanders I think that still colors their perception of what TCU is, and they're just an underrated program. And that's been true for a lot. TCU is always kind of an underrated, undervalued program historically. And I think it was again this year.
Okay, my last what we got right, and I'm hesitant to even bring this up because I don't want to make it seem like I'm celebrating on Behren Morton's injured body right now. But after that Utah game, there is a conversation of should Will Hammond start over Behren Morton that I had back in May. I went back and listened to our bold predictions podcast. One of them was what I talked about earlier, how Texas is going to go 9-3, make the college football playoff. My other one was that Will Hammond was going to Wally Pitt Baron Morton at some point this season. Now, I said he would outright outplay him is what would happen. I didn't say he would take over for injury, but also health for Baron Morton was a concern of mine because it feels like he has just been injured his entire career at Texas Tech.
Yeah, he absolutely has. Will Hammond's a beast. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback for Texas Tech. I still think that a healthy Baron Morton gives the Red Raiders the best chance to hit their ceiling and to win the Big 12. And if healthy, he will be the starter.
And part of it, too, when I said this, was because Baron Morton missed all of spring ball and they had so many transfers in that he didn't have time to develop that chemistry with. So the whole Will Hammond is going to play over Baron Morton. I want to be clear. I'm not trying to say Baron Morton's bad. Like, Baron Morton's very good, but Will Hammond, I think, could be special soon.
And had Baron Morton kind of played average the first 3 weeks, and then Will Hammond did what he did against Utah, I think there would be a legit conversation. I think Baron Morton played so well in Leftwich's offense the first 3 weeks that he's going to get his opportunity to come back, be healthy, and play again. But if he struggles at all this year and Tech feels like they have the opportunity to win big and the quarterback position is starting to hold us back, you now know you have a quarterback waiting in the wings that can go. I think that's big for Tech. And, I would imagine that's something that Morton is keenly aware of.
So I guess I'm not claiming victory on the take, but I'm claiming victory on the conversation.
Yeah,
the conversation is going to be happening now the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it back in May.
100%.
Okay, so that is our edition of what we got right, what we got wrong. If you guys remember other things we got wrong or right, let us know, and we will address them on the next podcast. So today we're going to basically do a deep dive on 2 of the games and then speed run through the rest. Very light week, sleep week, but 2 intriguing matchups. And I want to start with number 9 Texas A&M hosting Auburn Saturday, 2:30 p.m. on ESPN. Aggies are favored by 6.5. Craven, you're going to be in the house at Kyle Field. As we mentioned with the over-under discussion and me thinking I'm right on the over 7.5, I need A&M to win this game for the over to hit. And I'm getting scared about it, getting nervous, because I think the last 2 weeks are probably aligning more for Auburn in the sense that Auburn just got put in a body bag by Oklahoma, so they're mad going into this game. And also A&M has had a bye week to smell their own farts. So that makes me nervous.
Yeah, we're about to see how well a Texas A&M program that hasn't gotten a lot of flowers handles getting some flowers. Because they went from the program that can't win the big game on the road. We listed all the statistics and how bad they've been since 2012. Haven't beaten a ranked non-conference opponent on the road since like the 1970s in Penn State. And then they go and they do that. They kind of slay that dragon. They bury that narrative. And then for the next 2 weeks, you're one of the top 10 teams in the country. Mike Elko is the perfect coach for Texas A&M. Marcel Reed and that passing offense has figured it out. They're a college football playoff contender. Look at their schedule. They don't play Georgia or Alabama or Tennessee or Ole Miss. Like they're going to get into the SEC championship. Well, this is typically when the Aggies stub their toe. Like this is when the ball gets kind of taken away from them as they're about to kick it through the field goal to win the game, and the other team goes and wins, and they have a disappointing season. And so and this is how you know it too, is like Mike Elko had to answer questions at the Houston Touchdown Club of basically about the Aggie battered syndrome, right? Where like the fan base was like, what do you say to us that are like cautioning ourselves about getting excited because, we're used to a deflating loss. And Elko was basically like, put that aside, like get on board, like come enjoy this deal. But it's hard to like let go of that past trauma. And the Auburn game is one where I think Aggie fans are going to be more nervous than like they're favored for a reason. They're the better football team.
Yeah.
But this is a big one.
It's like Mike Elko's like the new stable boyfriend, but you're still a little bit traumatized from the wild times you had with Jimbo Fisher, where it was just emotional whiplash all the time.
Yeah. Is he going to come home?
Mm-hmm. How concerned are you that Notre Dame's defense is actually just really bad and A&M's offense is not as good as we thought it's going to be?
Not 100%, not overly concerned.
Okay.
I don't think the Notre Dame defense is as dominant as it was last year, and that the A&M offense probably not as great as it looked. That passing offense, Reed completed 46% of his passes, and so there was a lack of efficiency there. But the reason I'm not overly concerned about it is I trust the playmakers. To our conversation earlier about Texas A&M, I have no doubts about Mario Craver. I have no doubts about KC Concepcion. I have very few doubts about Colin Klein, the play caller. And for what they asked Marcel Reed to do, even if it isn't overly efficient and you have some 3 and outs, you're going to hit a few bombs. Like it's like a boxer with a big knockout punch. Like I trust the Aggies to land some of those blows and to score points. My worry is the defense and how they handle the physicality of Auburn. Oklahoma handled it tremendously last week and made Auburn kind of become a passing team. If you're A&M, I think you try to follow the same game plan that Venerables did. Stop the run, make this Jackson Arnold beat you with his arm, and maybe Cam Coleman and Singleton, maybe those guys make some plays and they score some points, but like over 60 minutes, you like that matchup more. What I worry about if I'm Texas A&M is that you can't stop the run. The Auburn offense looks like it did against Baylor, where they can do whatever they want in the run game. Arnold can use his legs, and then you give up 30-plus points, and it's a shootout.
Yeah, because I would worry for A&M too with Jackson Arnold's rushing threat, but then also Jeremiah Cobb's averaging 7.2 yards per carry, so it's not just him. I guess the question is, what you take solace in is that if you're Texas A&M, your team personnel is more like Oklahoma's than Baylor's. So you have the athletes to run with Jackson Arnold, and maybe Brent Venables gave you the blueprint of how to stop Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, I think that's right. I do. But I also watched that A&M run defense against UTSA.
And Utah State.
Yeah. And Robert Henry's been really good. Bronco Mendenhall is an excellent coach. Notre Dame's got a loaded backfield. So some of it could be, who A&M has played. But that run defense has been porous, and that puts a lot on Reed in that offense. And when we saw, like, this is my Texas brain, but it feels like Baylor, right? Like where you're asking the offense to play really well all the time, and they're going to occasionally have a few turnovers or lay an egg. If that A&M offense doesn't have a big game, because an Auburn defense that is talented, that has guys, that has dudes that are going to play NFL football, that recruit pretty well. And let's say A&M's offense has a bad game and Reed throws a couple interceptions, and you look up and the Aggies have scored 21, 24 points. Do you trust this defense to be able to win you that football game?
I guess my fear with the A&M offense, because I didn't do a good job of packaging this, is like, look, the offense has been great. They're averaging over 300 passing yards and 150 rushing yards, one of 9 teams in the nation to do that. Their explosive plays are great. 7.3 plays at 20-plus yards a game compared to 3.9 last year. But Notre Dame's defense also is 117th nationally in points allowed, and they're actively talking about Chris Ash rescinding his play calling duties to Marcus Freeman. And I know A&M has the ability to hit those deep shots to Craver and Concepcion, but can they hit the body blows with the running game? Because Auburn's defense held Oklahoma to 32 rushing yards on 26 carries. Yeah. So if you're asking Marcel Reed to do too much, is that when he starts throwing interceptions and then you get in trouble?
Yeah, it's a great question.
And maybe I'm just convincing myself of all the ways this is going to go wrong because I just said how I patted myself in the back for getting the over right on A&M.
I think Le'Veon Moss and this running game still hasn't hit its stride yet. And with each game that's passing, I think it's getting closer and closer. You saw his workload rise against Notre Dame. We haven't seen Marcel Reed's legs be a huge part of this offense as well, because it hasn't had to be, because they've had so much success throwing the football and scoring points. I think they still have a couple pitches. It's like the baseball pitcher with one pitch. I think they've won with their fastball so far. We'll see if Auburn's kind of the team that starts making them have to figure out other ways to win. But I do think, even though we haven't seen it, that they do have them. I think that run game can still be the best part of this offense. It'll be interesting because I'm like we talked about it earlier. I think we both thought that this was going to be like a 65% run the football, kind of look like Kansas State, and it hasn't. I wonder if we'll still say that in December, or if it's been more matchup oriented at the first part of this season.
The other thing, I think I might have buried the lead on this game because when asked about wide receivers Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton, Mike Elko responded, "Oh God."
Yeah. I think Des Ricks has like the lowest completion percentage against in college football right now. He's playing really well. They like Will Lee a lot. So I think the corners match up okay against Auburn. It's the safeties in that passing game that I really worry about, especially if Bryce Anderson's not playing, which he's not.
Yes. And Scooby Williams, the linebacker, is day to day. He probably is going to play, but might not be 100%. So,
yeah. And I like Damian Sanford a lot. Like, I think I have depth at linebacker. Safety and edge have been kind of the biggest question marks, I think, on the A&M defense. Like, Cassius Howell has 3 sacks, but they came in one series. They haven't been constantly creating pressure, and then that puts a spotlight on those safeties. You can like your corners against those wide receivers, but you're going to need some safety help against them, and I'm not sure the Aggies have great safety play.
Yeah. My last thing on A&M is, Craven, you wrote about this on TexasFootball.com. The 3 locked in opponents for every SEC team were leaked. A&M's are Texas, LSU, and Missouri. Oklahoma's right there, guys. Like, why does it have to be so hard? Arkansas.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm surprised about. I thought it would be Texas A&M, LSU, and Arkansas. That's an old Southwest Conference rivalry. They had continued it as SEC foe. They played in Arlington for a while. That's a pretty big game for those two fan bases. I'm surprised it got left off, but you know how it is. They're trying to jerry rig some stuff behind the scenes to not overload certain teams with certain programs. And the hard part about it is there's probably teams that need 4 or 5 permanent opponents, and some teams that only need like 1 or 2, if any. And so it's just like, how do you find Missouri 3 natural opponents in the SEC?
It's really easy to complain and moan like I'm doing right now, because I'm sure there's the best men are on it, working on the schedule breakdowns, and the Microsoft Excel sheet has to be out of control right now. But in my dumb brain, I look at the Big 12 when TCU and Texas Tech aren't playing this year, and now Texas A&M and Arkansas or Oklahoma aren't playing. And it's like, how is this so hard? How is it so hard to make these permanent rivalries?
I do think that the Big 12 and the ACC, I think it'd be smart for other conferences to look into this concept, because it is fun for the fan base to have some set rivalries and some trips. And on every odd year, you're going to Fort Worth, or every even year, you're going to Lubbock. And so there's some that should be protected. Texas Tech and TCU should play every single year. And I know they protect a few of those rivalries, but I think each team should have some to kind of build those up, like Houston and Central Florida. You could create some rivalries here and put some stakes on some games. So I think it'd be smart to do what the SEC did. There's just always going to be 2 or 3 teams that probably don't have 3 natural rivals, and then that makes it to where you got to start kind of moving some around.
All right, let's go to our second intriguing game of this weekend. Number 24, TCU travels to Tempe to take on Arizona State, 8 p.m. on Fox. Friday Night Lights action. Arizona State favored by 2.5 in this one. I know I just dumped on the Big 12, but I do want to say props to Brett Yormark. Look, I know a lot of the Texas coaches don't like the Friday night games, and I know we got some bias at Dave Campbell's too, because we cover high school football. And hand up, I'm not going to be able to watch this game. I'm going to be at a high school football game. But I see the vision of why Brett Yormark is doing these Friday night games, because it gives these 2 fun teams a chance to have a standalone game instead of getting caught up in the wash. Like, I wonder last week if Baylor Arizona State was on Friday, how much more national traction that would have gotten. Maybe not much, but I felt like it got caught in the wash a little bit last week.
Yeah, I think it's smart. And if we're in the trust tree here, if we gave the coaches true serum at the college level, I don't know if it bothers them as much as they say. That it's just a THSCA kind of talking point, right? That you echo, but I don't think it matters all that much. I don't think they've ever lost a recruit because on one Friday they had to go play at Arizona State or something like that. These staffs are so big, recruiting so complicated now that I don't know if it's as big of a deal as it's made to do. And so I'm with you. I think it's smart on the Big 12's part to try to get some real estate on a Friday night that's not going up against NFL games, that's not going up against marquee college football games. More people are going to watch TCU Arizona State on Friday night than they would if it was Saturday night when you're going up against Oregon, Penn State, and Alabama, Georgia. So Good on the Big 12. They've had a solid kind of TV marquee. I think this is going to be a banger of a football game. It feels like we've decided Texas Tech is the favorite to win the Big 12, and it's about who are they going to play. This one seems like an eliminator of sorts, that the winner of this game is going to be placed with Texas Tech as kind of the two favorites, with Iowa State, the loser of this game, kind of being that next tier down.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a banger. What I do worry about for Arizona State is them being 15th in the Big 12 in passing defense. By the way, the 15th in the Big 12 makes no sense. Like how all these conferences have teams than their names, but whatever. Yeah. Defensive back Xavier Alford is out for this game. So it's not like TCU can pass the ball, though, right? They're not good at throwing.
Well, Baylor, a really good passing team as well, and didn't put up a lot of points, didn't have a lot of success through the air. Some of that was fumbles. Josh Cameron had a couple of fumbles. And I think that's the key here for TCU, is to just play clean. Baylor allowed 9 points off of 3 turnovers and lost that game by 3 points. I don't think this Arizona State offense is as explosive as it was in the past. Like, they missed Cam Skattebo and just the physicality that he gave, because then you had to load up the box. Now Sam Leavitt's got one-on-one opportunities. Those weapons look a lot better. I do love Sam Leavitt, though. I think he's an incredible quarterback. He's going to make some plays. Tyson is one of the best wide receivers in the country. So I think this looks kind of like a Big 12 old school shootout. But I think TCU just saw this team. Like, I think Arizona State is a lot like SMU. Good quarterback that can make some plays. One big wide receiver in Romello Brinson, Leahy in the secondary that you can take advantage of when you have the football. I think that's going to look a lot like the Iron Skillet did.
I keep on hearing people say that Sam Leavitt is having a down year and Arizona State as a whole is having a down year too. And I kind of just don't agree, because every time I watch Sam Leavitt, he still looks electric to me. And I think it's just kind of indicative of a larger trend here where, like, I go back to the Texas Tech versus Utah game, where before the game they throw up that stat like this is the last ranked team on the schedule for either team. It's like, maybe it's because Arizona State goes from number 12 to unranked after losing to an undefeated SEC team. Maybe that's why.
I guess it depends on what you think about Mississippi State. Like, how bad of a loss do you think that is? They're
4-0 now.
They are. I don't know who else they've played. I off the top of my head, I don't know a ton about Mississippi State. And I know that's a hard place to play. Like, I do a podcast with Jay Arnold every single week, and he says Mississippi State's like the most annoying place he's ever played football.
Oh, yeah, those cowbells.
With the cowbells and stuff like that. So
that'll give you some CTE right there, just without even standing on the sideline.
I think they're just missing a little bit of the identity that they had last year, and that was like grown man in the backfield that can instill a little physicality on top of that passing game. And they just don't have that. The defense isn't great. It wasn't great last year either, but they hit their stride as the season went on. And so maybe this is an Arizona State team that keeps getting better each week. I did not leave. I was at the Baylor-Arizona State game. I did not leave McLean Stadium overly impressed with Arizona State. I left that game thinking Baylor should have won despite turning the ball over 3 times. Like, they had turned the ball over 3 times and still should have won that football game. Maybe it was just, anecdotal, but I think TCU has the advantage here.
All right. Upon further review, Mississippi State has beat Northern Illinois, Alcorn State, Arizona State, and Southern Miss. So, all right, maybe point taken on that. Still, though, it's an SEC team.
Yeah. I mean,
at away game, you lost by 4. I don't know. Getting dropped from 12 to unranked is kind of crazy considering all that, but whatever.
I think that says something about the Big 12 too, just like the perception of the league and that it takes. Because you're right. If like the 12th ranked team in the SEC had lost to Mississippi State on the road, they wouldn't have dropped completely out. It would have been like, well, that SEC gauntlet, you lose a couple of games. Like, that's just what's going to go. So, maybe we look back and Arizona State had a bad loss, I think, at the beginning of last year too.
I guess what I don't understand is like when a Ole Miss loses to a Mississippi State or something like that, or a Florida that's out on a down year, it's like, man, that SEC gauntlet. And then when the Big 12 losing to an SEC team, it's like, that's why they suck.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they lost to Cincinnati last year. Arizona State did. That's the one I was thinking of. So, what's nice about the 12-team playoff and how it's set up now is that you can lose that game and it doesn't matter. just get hot, go win the conference. And you can probably lose one of these games in the Big 12 and still go play for a conference championship. You might be able to do it if you lose two, like the two teams that played for it last year. So I think both of these teams are in the hunt. I think both of these teams are two of the five best in the conference. And I'm excited for it to have kind of its own showcase, its own time for everybody to watch, for all the voters to watch it.
Yeah. All right. Let's run through these last games here on the docket. Baylor travels to Oklahoma State, 2:30 p.m. on ESPN2. Baylor is favored by -20.5. I think I'm making Oklahoma State spread my mortal lock of the week after the Gundy news.
That Oklahoma State covers?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I may have called my bookie before we got onto this podcast to be like, hey, give me Oklahoma State in the points. I believe in the dead cat bounce. I don't know if Oklahoma State will win the football game, but I would not be surprised if they have an inspired performance now that the king is dead.
Well, and just to clarify for the listeners, what the dead cat bounce is when your coach gets fired, you have one inspired performance, and then you play the worst football of all time the rest of the season.
Right. So a bad spot there for Baylor. I do think this is a get-right game. Jokes aside, I think this is a get-right game for Sawyer Robertson in that offense. Give me Josh. If you're a player prop guy, take Josh Cameron and whatever over his wide receiver number is going to be. He had 2 fumbles last game. He's going to play like a madman. I'd imagine Spav in that offense force feeds him the ball to get his confidence back up. Baylor defense played pretty well last week. And so that's the thing I'm looking forward to is like, I think we know what the Baylor offense was. That was an aberration, just a bad game, a couple turnovers. But is the Baylor defense turning a corner, or was that just an inspired performance by them?
Yeah, I guess we'll find out against Oklahoma State there. So, okay, moving on. Houston has another Friday night showdown against Oregon State, who is 0-4 right now, 9:30 p.m. on ESPN. The Cougs are favored by 12.5 points.
Yeah, these games are big for Houston not to stub their toe. You host Texas Tech in 2 weeks, and what will be a huge game. If you're able to go and win this, you'd be 2 4-0 football teams kind of playing a big game at night. It's a 6 p.m. game, October 4th in Houston. Willie Fritz and the Cougars, the main goal has been to capture the attention of the city and build a winner to kind of get everybody riled up and get that stadium rocking. If you can win this football game and avoid an upset, you set up a huge game to where you can really capture the city if you go pull that upset against the Red Raiders. So this feels like a big don't look past it type spot for the Cougs.
Speaking of capturing the city, North Texas going to play South Alabama, 11 a.m. on ESPNU. Mean Green favored by 12.5. And if they win, it'll be the first time they were 5-0 since 1977. Just a couple years after Mean Joe Green left and went to the Steelers.
This is kind of what I just said for Houston. You have that big game against Washington State where you're trying to sell out the stadium and make a point that this is a new North Texas team. You're going to knock off this Pac-12 team that everybody knows, and you blow them out. And then you have another kind of get-up emotional game to go on the road to play the defending American Conference champion. It's another overtime game. You've now played 2 of those on the road. You have South Florida, as I mentioned earlier in the show, in a couple of weeks on a Friday night game that could be huge. Do not overlook this one. Like, these are the type of games that jump up and get you. North Texas needs to avoid that to kind of keep this momentum going.
Okay, Rice travels to Navy, 2:30 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Navy is favored by 14.5. This game might last 90 minutes because both teams are going to run the ball exclusively.
Yeah, sports writers' dream here if you're on deadline, if people even have deadlines anymore. Excited to see Rice kind of punch up and wait. That Louisiana win looks worse and worse. And we talked about it on the recap show. You're Rice. You haven't finished with a winning record in like 10 years. You take all the wins. You don't apologize for beating Louisiana. But this Navy team is going to be a step up in weight class. This is the best team you've faced. They also run the option. It's on the road. Feels like a real litmus test to like how real the Owls are right away.
UTEP plays Louisiana Tech, 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Louisiana Tech favored by 4.5. Is it fair of me to say like red alert, panic button smashed if UTEP loses this game?
Well, it depends on what your panic is.
Bowl game.
Yes.
Was my prediction.
Yeah, they lose this game. I think it's far less likely they go to a bowl than go to a bowl. I don't know if I'm ready to panic one way or the other on the Scotty Walden era. How long do you give a coach at UTEP before you start taking real stock into like what they're doing? I always struggle with that.
I think everyone gets 3 years.
So he's not even halfway to when we really need to start grading Scotty Walden in that way. So I wouldn't panic about it too much. I mean, you'd love to see some steady gains and a big win at home against the Louisiana Tech team, who you're not that much worse than. That would be huge. But yeah, for bowl purposes, this is a huge game.
Well, by 3 years, I also mean if he went 3-9, 3-9, 3-9, he's probably gone. Like at the end of 3 years, I wouldn't say I wait till year 4 to say like, okay, how does your team look?
Yeah, I think my answer is 2 complete years. And he's 16 games into his tenure. So he's got 7 or 8 games left to really build momentum. They need to start winning some football games.
Yeah. Okay. That's going to do it for our slate of games this week. Again, 6 of the 13 Texas FBS teams are off. Still some intriguing games that we discussed at length. Craven, I mean, any closing thoughts through the door here before we send the listener on their way?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the coaching carousel with Gundy's job opening up at Oklahoma State, and you immediately saw the list go up with Eric Morris's name mentioned, G.J. Kinney's name mentioned. I think Jeff Traylor's name is going to be mentioned. Colin Klein's going to be mentioned, the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M. What I find fascinating is we have 13 head coaches in the FBS level in Texas. I think you could only make the argument that one is on the hot seat, and it would be an argument to be made. I don't even know if Aranda is really on the hot seat. I think he's the only one that's at the risk of losing their job after this year. You know, like Sarkisian, Traylor, Kinney, they're locked in. Guys like Elko, Fritz, Walden are in year 2. North Texas and Morris had a question going into the year, but they're 4-0. And I just don't think anybody's going to get fired. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a quiet carousel, because I do think we have some coaches that are going to get looks. Kinney may be the hottest name in the G5. Morris might be right behind him. Obviously, Jeff Traylor's had so much success, more than both of those two combined, by the way. And so he's going to get a lot of attention as well. And then at the P4 level, I think the name to watch is Rhett Lashley. Where would you rank the SMU job? Is the SMU job better than the Arkansas job?
I don't think so because of the ACC factor, and I don't know where that league is going to be headed after the 2031 media rights deals are redone, because the top 2 teams in the ACC literally only stayed in the ACC because they got to negotiate their buyout of the conference down. So that doesn't sound like long-term stability for that conference. But Arkansas is also kind of all in as a basketball school with the Tyson's chicken money going to John Calipari, so you'd be second fiddle there.
Unless the prodigal son from Arkansas returns home and unlocks that chicken. But
like, look, he wasn't like Johnny Manziel at Arkansas, too. No, all due respect, like he was an awesome football player, but he wasn't like a Heisman winner at Arkansas.
No doubt.
How many Arkansas alums are like, oh my, like Rhett Lashley, Arkansas alum? Like we all know that about him.
Well, I don't think you have to tap into your playing days as much as the networking.
True.
Right. Like he is a high school legend in that state. Played for Gus Malzahn, won some state championships and all that kind of stuff. And so, Rhett, I know Rhett, he's very good at schmoozing. We've seen what he's been able to do at SMU in terms of like getting those rich guys to open up their pocketbooks. And so I think that's a strength of his. My only point is that Lashley is going to be in the running for a lot of these jobs that open up, and there's going to be multiple SEC jobs that open up. Like if Auburn opens up, that's a place to look at. Florida, if Florida opens up, will Lashley get a phone call there? So Clemson, if something in the ACC happens crazily, I don't think Clemson will open up because they owe Dabo like $1,000 or $1 billion or whatever. But I think Lashley is also somebody that as Big Ten and SEC jobs open up, he's going to be a name that's thrown around there, and we'll start to kind of figure out where SMU is in the pecking order.
Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion. I think SMU is at the same time, a great job, but I would still put SEC Big Ten jobs above that job.
Yeah, I think I would too. And so I think that's why I would put Lashley in that mix of potential coaches that like SMU could open, and it's not because Lashley would get fired, obviously. SMU could open because Lashley gets enticed by a job that's ready-made to win now, where maybe SMU is 3-4 years away from entering the Florida State, Miami, Clemson kind of ceiling.
Was he at Auburn before? Why do I feel like he's been at Auburn?
Yeah, he was there when they won the national championship.
Okay, that's
he
why
was the
there.
QB coach with Cam Newton and all that kind of stuff. So I think I think Auburn is a place that is near and dear to Lashley, and I think he's viewed upon well there. So that's always been the one I've thought more than Arkansas was that Auburn would be one that entices them. But this stuff's so fickle. That's what's funny, right? It's like Traylor was the hottest name in the world in the G5 level like 2 years ago, and now they go 7-6. They start 2-2, and then it's GJ Kinney and Eric Morris that have all the shine. So maybe it depends on how good SMU is this year, and if they end up going 7-5, 8-4, maybe he doesn't get the looks as if these jobs had opened at the end of last year.
Well, here's the other thing to consider specifically with Oklahoma State, with them opening right now. Are they going to try to make a hire mid-season?
I mean, maybe not mid-season, but I would think that they, within reason, try to have a guy locked up by like November. Because you're trying not to waste a year anymore. And the sooner you can get somebody in place, the quicker you can get going on portal research and retaining your own roster and getting some recruits before that early signing period is done. And so all this happens in back channels. Like Oklahoma State didn't start reaching out to coaches today. They've been doing it since the weekend, maybe even before that. And so even if nothing is announced in October or November, I imagine you make these decisions this early with the idea of you're trying to lock somebody in, if at the very least behind the scenes by October or November, so you can get a class going and you can have a roster ready to compete in 2026, because you don't get the same amount of time as you used to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you're an SMU fan, you see a Tyson's Chicken truck around Dallas, report it instantly.
Yeah. Go to a different chicken company. If you're a frozen chicken, try to tank that stock.
All right. On that note, with their marching orders given out, let's say goodbye for this week. Week 5 preview show. We will see y'all on Monday morning with all of our thoughts and hot takes on week 5.